Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you could join me today because we're about to dive into a topic that's equal parts rewarding, chaotic, and downright entertaining. That's right. We're talking about a day in the life of a bed and breakfast owner. Now, if you're imagining a serene morning with birds chirping, a perfectly brewed cup of coffee in hand, and guests quietly enjoying their breakfast while you bask in the glow of your thriving business, well, let me stop you right there. Owning a B&B is a lot of things, but predictable and serene? Not so much. It's a whirlwind of hospitality, problem-solving, and occasionally wondering why someone thought it was a good idea to bring a pet iguana to your establishment. Yes, that happened. But don't let that scare you off. Running a bed and breakfast is one of the most fulfilling jobs out there. You get to meet people from all walks of life, create memorable experiences for your guests, and, if you're lucky, sneak in a few bites of that amazing breakfast you just served. So, let's break it down. What does a typical day look like for a B&B owner? Spoiler alert, there's no such thing as a typical day, but I'll do my best to give you a sense of the rhythm. First things first, mornings. If you're not a morning person, you might want to reconsider this career path because mornings are the heart and soul of a bed and breakfast. Guests expect a warm, welcoming start to their day, and that starts with you. Most mornings begin before the sun is up, with a quick check of the kitchen to make sure everything is ready for breakfast service. Depending on your setup, you might be whipping up a batch of pancakes, frying eggs to order, or setting out a buffet of pastries and fruit. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon to wake you up. Unless, of course, you accidentally burn the bacon, in which case you'll be waking up to the sound of the smoke alarm. It happens to the best of us. Now, breakfast isn't just about the food. It's also your chance to connect with your guests. Some will want to chat about their plans for the day, ask for recommendations, or share stories about their travels. Others will be perfectly content to sip their coffee in silence, and that's okay too. The key is to read the room and adapt your approach. I once had a guest who wanted to discuss the finer points of 18th century French architecture over breakfast. Did I know anything about 18th century French architecture? Not a clue. But I nodded along, asked a few questions, and by the end of the meal, they were convinced I was an expert. Sometimes being a good host is just about being a good listener. Once breakfast is over and the guests have headed out for the day, it's time to tackle the less glamorous side of the job, cleaning. Yes, running a B&B involves a lot of cleaning. Rooms need to be tidied, bathrooms scrubbed, and linens changed. And let's not forget the common areas, which somehow always seem to accumulate a mysterious layer of crumbs and fingerprints, no matter how often you clean them. Pro tip, invest in a good vacuum cleaner. It will be your best friend. Of course, cleaning isn't just about appearances. It's also about creating a safe and comfortable environment for your guests. That means keeping an eye out for maintenance issues, like a leaky faucet or a squeaky door hinge, and addressing them before they become bigger problems. I once had a guest who mentioned that their room was a little drafty. Turns out the window had been left slightly open, and a family of squirrels had decided to make themselves at home in the attic. Lesson learned: always double-check the windows. Afternoons are usually a bit quieter, which gives you a chance to catch up on administrative tasks. This might include responding to emails, updating your website or social media, and managing bookings. And let's not forget the never-ending quest for good reviews. A glowing review can do wonders for your business, so don't be afraid to ask happy guests to share their experience online. Just make sure you're doing it in a way that feels natural and not pushy. Nobody likes a hard sell. As the day winds down, it's time to prepare for the next wave of guests. This might involve setting out snacks or drinks in the common area, checking in new arrivals, and making sure everything is ready for the evening. And here's where things can get interesting. Guests are unpredictable, and no two check-ins are ever the same. Some will arrive right on time with a smile and a suitcase. Others will show up hours late looking frazzled and apologetic. And then there are the ones who call you at 11 p.m. because they've locked themselves out of their room. It's all part of the adventure. Evenings are also a great time to connect with your guests on a more personal level, whether it's sharing a glass of wine, swapping travel stories, or simply making sure they have everything they need for a comfortable stay. These moments of connection are what make running a B&B so special. I once had a guest who taught me how to play the ukulele during an impromptu jam session in the common room. Did I sound terrible? Absolutely. But it was one of the most memorable evenings I've ever had. And then, finally, it's time to call it a day. Or at least it would be if you didn't have to prep for tomorrow. Running a B&B is a 24/7 job, and there's always something that needs to be done. But here's the thing, it's also incredibly rewarding. There's nothing quite like the feeling of knowing you've created a space where people feel welcome, cared for, and maybe even a little spoiled. It's hard work, but it's worth it. So, there you have it. A day in the life of a bed and breakfast owner. It's a little chaotic, a lot of work, and full of surprises. But it's also one of the most fulfilling jobs you'll ever have. And if you're thinking about taking the plunge, my advice is simple. Go for it. Just make sure you've got a good sense of humour, a strong cup of coffee, and maybe a backup plan for when the squirrels show up. Trust me, you'll need it.